Hi there, my name is Boonstra. I'm a developer advocate at Google, specifically on conversational AI. And this means that you can find me at conferences sharing stories about conversational AI, Dialogflow, contact centers, and speech technology. The feedback that I get from my audience, I usually take that back and then I'll go to the Google engineers to better our products. And that is also what I want to do with this session today. I will talk a little bit more about where we are and what we see at Google. When we talk about conversational AI, many people think about the Google Assistant and WaveNet speech models, but we actually work a lot also with enterprise customers. So I will also share some learnings while working with them and how we can improve customer care. The next generation of conversational, where we are working on, for example, new products for interaction and building chatbots, technology to create speech synthesizers, and all things around it. So I'll show some demos, and I hope you will have fun. Let's start. This is a statement that's made by Gartner, where it says like 50% of the enterprises will spend more on bot development than traditional mobile app development within the next year. And that's also what we see at Google. Like much more companies started by building chatbots. We have at Google like several conversational products. Some of them you might be aware of. For example, the Google Assistant, which comes with the Actions on Google framework and the Builder tool for building Google Assistant apps. Maybe you are aware of the tool called Dialogflow. Dialogflow is a conversational suite for building chatbots. You can build Google Assistant bots with that as well, but you can also build chatbots for web, social media, or maybe even contact centers with this tool. Maybe you are familiar with our speech-to-text and text-to-speech machine learning models and APIs. We can listen to spoken text and we can synthesize written text to audio. We'll talk about that today as well. And the last category, this is a category that not many people are familiar with. These are the contact center technology. Like we use bot technology into call centers so that virtual agents can pick up the phone and you can automate like the whole call for you. But let's talk a little bit more about Dialogflow. If you can see here on this diagram, this is our Dialogflow usage, and it started in 2016. People started to get familiar with conversational AI around that year. People started to create Google Assistant chatbots, or maybe chatbots on web. But I mean, people were building chatbots already before that. But this time there was a big shift here because we were building chatbots with the help of machine learning, so that you don't need to program your chatbot anymore, but that we let the chatbot learn based on training phrases and examples. Our tool Dialogflow, which can do that, it's based on machine learning, has a user base now of almost over the 1.5 million, and it keeps on growing. So it's a very popular tool. And what we see with that is not only the chatbots are as simple as in the past anymore, but even the chatbots, also the complexity is growing. Dialogflow is a tool that's chosen for its outstanding NLP, natural language processing, but also for its simplicity. For the people that don't know Dialogflow, Dialogflow is a development suite for building conversational UIs. Thus, chatbots, voice bots, contact centers, you can all build it with the same tool. You even can support multiple channels over 20 different languages. It's powered by machine learning, natural language understanding, but also intent classification and entity extraction. The way how this works is that Dialogflow UX designers or agent modelers
or maybe even developers, they create intents. And they do this by specifying training phrases to train the underlying machine learning model. An intent categorizes a user's intention. For each Dialogflow agent, you can define as many intents as you want, where your combined intents can handle a complete conversation. Each intent can contain parameters and responses. Matching an intent is also known as intent classification or intent matching. This is the main concept in Dialogflow. Once an intent is matched, it can return a response. It coded its parameters, we call that entity extraction, or it can trigger webhook code fulfillment. For each example, you can fetch fulfillment. That's, for example, to fetch data from a database. Now, when an end user writes or says something to the chatbot, we call that a user utterance or user expression. And Dialogflow matches the expression to the best intent in your Dialogflow agent, based on the training phrases where it was trained on.
Now here's what we see at Google. In the beginning, in 2016, most of the chatbots that were built with these tools, those were kind of simple chatbots. They were building Google Assistant actions with Dialogflow, and typically these conversations, the dialogues of these chatbots or voice bots, they took 1 or 2 turn-taking turns. For example, you could say, "What's on TV tonight?" And then the chatbot would tell you, or the Google Assistant app would tell you, "Well, today on MTV, Pimp My Ride is playing." That's a simple turn-taking steps, right? It's like only one question, one utterance, and one simple answer. But what we see nowadays is like people, they are making much more complex chatbots. They became more complicated over time. People are not building simple chatbots anymore. Now people are building, or actually are maybe replacing their whole customer care, or they are replacing their HR or automating their HR processes. And they do this all by chatbots. So that means like we're entering the next generation of conversational AI. Now here is another statement. This is a statement from Juniper Research where it says like chatbots, they are expected to trim the business cost by more than 8 billion per year by 2022. So within the next couple of years. And if you tell me, well, that cannot be with a simple chatbot like a Google Assistant app. You won't make a lot of money. You won't make millions of money by building simple chatbots. But you will make a lot of money, or you can save and trim a lot of business costs if you create complex or complicated use cases. For example, like replacing your customer care in your contact center. And this is something that Verizon currently does with our tooling. You can imagine that a contact center has a lot of cost, right? You can save that. Instead of hiring a whole army of people picking up the phone, you can have like a virtual agent pick up the phone for you. And you still need people in the contact center, but more for when you escalate a call. Or you can route the calls to the right people. Conversational AI in contact centers is actually way more complicated than the Google Assistant apps, even though it's both voice and you would both talk to it. But at the Google Assistant, as I mentioned before, these are simple user utterances, user expressions. They match to one intent. If I ask, like, turn off the lights, I know what the question is and I can turn off the lights. But when you enable a virtual agent in a contact center, a user can talk and they can have like a whole story from 10 minutes long. And there are many possible intents, but what is the real question that the user asks and what should you answer? So you can imagine like that's already complicated. And on top of that, it also comes with lots of contact center features. You need to deal with mono audio. You need to be able to listen to the keypad tones. You want to interrupt the call flow. Contact centers are chatbots, are virtual agents, but way more complicated. And now here's what we see at Google. The big money savers, those are typically the complex use cases. The replacement for the customer care, the contact centers, HR automation. Normally these things are very expensive for businesses, especially contact centers. Conversational AI can reduce the call time, can reduce the hold time, and of course it offers like 24/7 availability. Now the next generation of conversational UIs are more complex. Large complex flows and giant implementations, that's what we see. So this could mean like maybe hundreds or thousands of dialogues, like intenses that we call that in Dialogflow. And more than 3 turn-taking turns. Maybe you want to branch off your conversation in various ways. Parts of the dialogues are repeatable. And imagine like when you have like a chatbot flow and at some point you want to log in, that can come back on various points in your conversation. So yeah, it's repeatable. You really need to understand the incoming spoken text and the context. So imagine in the contact center where people talk for 10 minutes. Yeah, that's definitely more complicated. And then on top of that, companies, they work with teams on large implementations. So they all need to work together and they need to maintain your virtual agent because it's always growing.
Here you can see an example of a complicated dialog flow. And mind you, this example doesn't even have many intents. This example uses 7 turn-taking turns and a bunch of repeatable dialogues. You will see this example later in one of my demos, but what I'm actually building is a conversational tool picker, which based on a bunch of yes or no questions can make a selection on which conversational tool you should use. And it really drills down, and at some point it even branches out that you have like multiple answers that you can give. And now in a real world, examples are much more complex like this one, and they will have many more pages or many more lines of dialogue. But you can think of an example as maybe a tax return chatbot. Like think about tax return here in the Netherlands. You have to fill in maybe like 5 to 8 different pages of forms. And imagine if you build a chatbot for something like that. It becomes very complicated because it has many turn-taking turns. Other examples could be a replacement of a customer care or an HR chatbot. Really, you see like if you have a dialogue and you would see it in a tree, it will kind of look like this. And this is why we're now introducing Dialogflow CX. This is a new tool. It's called Dialogflow Customer Experience. That's what it stands for. And it's a development suite for building advanced, large and complex conversational UIs. It empowers your team to accelerate creating enterprise-level conversational experiences through visual bot builders, reusable intents, and the ability to address multi-taking turns in conversations. This is an additional product and it will coexist next to Dialogflow. It's a different product which addresses the use case of building complex enterprise chatbots or virtual agents, voice agents in contact centers. And it's an easy way to maintain all the always ongoing conversations. So what's new? What is in Dialogflow CX that you couldn't do with the previous Dialogflow version? Well, it has all these features, and one of these features is flows. And flows allows various teams to work together on different parts of the conversation. So for example, think about one team is working on a payment module, one team is working on a login module for the chatbot, the virtual agent. Another team is working on general questions. They all are very modular and you can stitch them all together. It comes with stateful pages, so you can put all your dialogues in a stateful page, and therefore it allows you to reuse your dialogues and allows also multiple turn-taking turns. Now, as you have seen already in the previous demo video, it also contains a visual flow builder. This graphs each flow as a conversational state machine diagram, which makes it complex agents easier to design and also understand. So for maintainability, this is a great tool to use. It will also come with native IVR settings. So you can turn any Dialogflow CX agent into a contact center just with one click. And then on top of that, it has advanced analytics, bot metrics. So you can see what your customers have been asking and how you can improve your chatbot or your voice bot over time. All right, let's have a look into one of my own demos. This is a demo chatbot that I've created, which can give you advice on which Google conversational tool you can use for your chatbots. Maybe you want to use the conversational builder for Google Assistants. Maybe you want to use the new Dialogflow CX, or maybe you want to use Dialogflow Essentials. This tool can help you with that. And when you start the chatbot, this is the tool that the developers will use to build the bot. And the developers, they can use, or they can create flows. So what you see here is like the start flow, and it basically works like kind of a main menu where you can kick off your questions. Like either I can start the conversational picker tool, or I can start talking to Google. But let's say, we want to use the conversational tool picker. So that we start that flow, and then you can see that's like a complex dialogue, right? Because there are lots and lots of turn-taking turns, and all these questions, these are yes or no questions, they branch off from each other. So for example, I ask people like, are you building for the Google Assistant? And then you can say yes or no. And based on the no answer, for example, then it will ask a follow-up question like, are you building for contact centers? And then you say yes or no. And based on that, it can either give you answer to start using one of these three tools. Now let's have a look into the simulator and see how that works. So I can start my chatbot with the welcome intent. So hi. And I get the message like, hi, I'm the Google's conversational AI advisor. I can explain about the different conversational tools we have at Google. You can ask me which conversational tool you should use, or I can give you answers on the various tools. What would you like to know? I would like to know which conversational tool I can use. I can give you a guidance on which tool to use. Shall we start with the very first question? Yes. Are you building for cross-channel agents? So am I using multiple channels in my agent? No. Are you building for the Google Assistant? No. Are you building a conversation for a contact center, an IVR? Nope. Does your conversation take more than 3 turn-taking turns? Yeah, I think so. Then the product that you will need is called Dialogflow CX. Can you leave your email address so Google can contact you? So you see here that Dialogflow is now in the request info flow. A parameter is set to the product CX, and I can leave my email address. And then you can see that it collected the parameters that I've entered before, as the confirmation is like a Google sales representative will call you about CX on lee@lee.nl. And you see at this moment also the conversation has been ended. Now what about the current Dialogflow? Will that still exist? Yes, it will still exist, but we will rename it to Dialogflow Essentials. It's a proven product. It has over 1.5 million developers in Dialogflow or dialog writers. So we won't stop this tool. It will still be there and available. It's praised for its simplicity and the state-of-art NLU, but it's also more focused on simple chatbots and voice bots with 1 or 2 or 3 turn-taking turns. It's also a great tool for building Google Assistant actions with. or cross agents, which include voice assistants like the Google Assistant or Alexa. A great tool for small businesses and individuals. So I have talked about the interaction part, conversational AIs, and tooling that Google is working on. I have also mentioned understanding, so think about the contact centers, where we use phone models to understand the long utterances. But I haven't spoken yet about talking, generating voices from text. With industry-leading voice quality, Google Cloud Text-to-Speech generates speech from written text. In the past, we had standard machine learning models, mainly because of the Google Assistant. We've created more advanced models then. And those advanced models, they sound more human-like. This is what we call the WaveNet models. We use machine learning to train these models based on voices. I can give you a demo of both of these so you can clearly hear the difference. And again, this is what's currently out there. Afterwards, I will tell you where Google is working on.
Google Cloud Text-to-Speech enables developers to synthesize natural-sounding speech with 100+ voices, available in multiple languages and variants. It applies DeepMind's groundbreaking research in WaveNet and Google's powerful neural networks to deliver the highest fidelity possible. As an easy-to-use API, you can create lifelike interactions with your users across many applications and devices.
Now, as you heard, this was the standard voice. So this is the text-to-speech model that we had from the very beginning, so years ago. And as you could hear, these sound very robotic. Now let's move to the next step of text-to-speech, the WaveNet models. And this was introduced by the Google Assistant, because the Google Assistant has a very human-like voice. And we're now using the WaveNet models also in our other conversational tools. So for example, in Dialogflow or in your contact center. It sounds like this.
Google Cloud Text-to-Speech enables developers to synthesize natural-sounding speech with 100+ voices, available in multiple languages and variants. It applies DeepMind's groundbreaking research in WaveNet and Google's powerful neural networks to deliver the highest fidelity possible. As an easy-to-use API, you can create lifelike interactions with your users across many applications and devices.
Yeah, and the nice thing about WaveNet is that you can choose from a various range of voices, like female voices, male voices, neutral voices, and you can also change the pitch and the tones and the pronunciation. You can all tweak that with WaveNet, so that's really cool. But with that, we also heard a lot of people asking, like, yeah, but wouldn't it be great if we could use our own voice in our Google Assistant apps or in our contact center apps? Because we have like a brand actor that always speaks into our commercials, and we would like it to use that voice, or we'd like it to use that voice in our contact center. Well, that is something that Google is working on.
And now we're working on a new tool, which is called Tacotron 2. And this allows you to generate your own custom voice by just reading out like a 30-minute script. And that way it will train the machine learning model on that particular voice. So you can have your own voice or your own actor or brand, as a contact center voice or as a voice on the Google Assistant.
Let's have a demo of Tacotron 2. And in this demo, we used a human actress to train a custom model. So it sounds very human-like. It's very hard to distinguish it from a true human voice. And let's just show you, I'll show you some of the examples. This also works really well with complex words, like this one.
Generative adversarial network or variational autoencoder.
It's even robust to spelling mistakes.
Really awesome. This is really awesome.
So you see here in the demo, like it was written wrong, like this is really awesome, but it corrects it while speaking it, reading it out. It's actually also very good for tongue twisters.
Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick? She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure.
And the last example that I would like to show you is in this example, we used the custom voice that was trained versus the real audio recording. And now I'm asking you if you can hear the difference between two, or which one is Tacotron 2 and which one is the human.
That girl did a video about Star Wars lipstick. That girl did a video about Star Wars lipstick. George Washington was the first president of the United States. George Washington was the first president of the United States.
Cool, isn't it?
Yes, and this brings us to the conclusion for today. As you have seen, Google is working a lot on new technology and tools for the next generation of conversational AI. And we talked about tools for creating interaction, building chatbots, building voice bots or bots for contact centers. And as we now know, chatbots, they aren't there where they were 5 years ago. No, it's much more complex than back then. And with the new tool Dialogflow CX, which is currently in beta, you can play around with this and start building complex, advanced agents with maybe thousands of intents or pages, making it reusable, and start using with the visual flow builder. The other big thing where Google is working on are the advancements in speech technology, text-to-speech. With Tacotron 2, you can create custom voices, all automated. So that means you type something and your own voice will speak or read it out for you. If you want to read more about that, please have a look into these URLs. And with that, I would like to thank you.